Committee of City Government and ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember Conklin.
Here.
Councilmember Clifford. Here. Councilmember McFadden.
Here.
Vice President Miller.
Here.
President Scott.
Here.
And I should note we're also joined by Councilmember Patterson. Introductory number 415, local law amending the city charter with respect to the salary of the mayor. No questions. I would move for a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I say aye. Carries 5-0. Introductory number 416, which we have an amendment on. It is the local law amending the city charter with respect to the salary of the members of city council. And the amendment, the local law shall take effect 45 days after its adoption. Do I have, welcome last finance meeting, Councilmember Haig. May I have a motion to amend?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
I say aye. Carries 5-0. Now on introductory number 416, local law amending the city charter with respect to the salary of the members of city council. Any questions? If not, a motion to adopt as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I say aye. Carries 5-0. Introductory number 417, resolution approving appointments to the Board of Assessment Review.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I say aye. Carries 5-0. Introduction number 418, a local law amending the Code of Ethics. Any questions on introductory number 418? If not, a motion to amend, a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All in favor? Carries 5-0. Introductory number 419, authorizing agreements for information technology contract services. Questions on introductory number 419? Note we're also joined by a chilled Councilmember Spall. Questions on introductory number 419?
Move to adopt.
So second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 I say aye. Carries 5-0. Introductory number 420, authorizing an amendatory agreement with Entree Computer Services, Inc., related to the upgrade of the city Microsoft Access systems. Questions on intro 420?
Move to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I say aye. Carries 5-0. Introductory number 421, authorizing an agreement for the 2018 Xerox Rochester International Jazz Festival. Questions on intro 421?
I guess I do.
Councilmember Clifford?
I'm just looking at the budget that was submitted, and I'm assuming by the way it's presented, so the ticket and registration revenue says that's the city portion of city-sponsored concerts. So obviously, they're making more revenues off of other concerts. But do the other revenues identified, vendor sales, fundraising, foundation, and corporate grants, those aren't necessarily, the city doesn't get a portion of those, correct?
No, the way that Jazz Festival is structured under the city sponsorship is that we basically put dollars towards the free events that are outside, and that way we can help underwrite opportunities for Rochester citizens to take part in Jazz Fest. But we specifically give our contribution, and our sponsorship is aimed at those free public events.
Okay. So the corporate and foundation grants, those are ones just sponsoring the public.
Correct, and
if
you look at the bottom table, you'll see the total expenses for the outdoor event exceed the amount that the city
Right.
funds. So we are underwriting a portion of those events, but they do seek out other revenue in order to support the entirety of the free public event.
Gotcha, right. Okay, thank you.
Additional questions on introductory number 421? If not, a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, please say aye.
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 And I say aye, carries 5-0. Introductory number 422, authorizing an agreement for the 2018 Rochester Twilight Criterion. Questions on introductory number 422? Not a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I say aye, carries 5-0. Introductory number 423, authorizing an agreement for the Rock the Park concerts.
I like if you change the name.
Rock the Park. Questions?
I'll move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I say aye, carries 5-0. Introductory number 424, authorizing an agreement for the Spring Gut Group for production of the 2018 Party in the Park, which has an amendment to it, and the amendment is correcting the source of funds to divide the cost over 2 fiscal years. So if we could move the amendment first.
Madam Chairwoman, that's actually the next one. This one just changes the term of the agreement.
424?
Right.
Yes, the term.
Oh, it's right, you're right. Changing the agreement from 1 year with 4 optional 1-year renewals to 3 years with 2 optional 1-year renewals. Thank you, Brian. Questions on the amendment?
Guess I do have a question on that. Just, I don't think we have other promoter contracts that we do more than 1 year at a time, or do we? We do.
Yeah,
Actually, the
we
next-
do with Rock the Park,
Okay.
but also the objective here is we made a commitment to council to try and find a way to increase sponsorship for events, and we think part of the attractiveness of having a 3-year is allowing for the promoter to market the event to sponsors and having the ability to do a sponsorship over multi-years. So we're hoping that'll be a way to further strengthen revenue related to this event.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the amendment? If not, a motion to adopt the amendment?
So moved.
Moved and seconded, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
I say aye. Now on introductory number 424 as amended, a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Carries 5-0. Introductory number 425, appropriating firefighters' insurance funds. Brian, this is administered by the law department or by finance?
It's actually kind of between the fire department and finance for the most part. It did arise, the current structure did arise out of litigation, so the basic rules that govern it are things that were negotiated as part of the settlement of that litigation, but in terms of the decisions and distribution of the funds, that's handled, by the finance department, and the
Okay.
fire department obviously engages with the
Okay.
2% committee of the union.
And as I'm sure Mr. Benacasa recalls, until this was finally settled, this was an ongoing point of contention for a good many years with the fire department and the city of Rochester. Is this, Charlie, is it well managed and going well now?
I believe so. The settlement we had from the judge way back in 2012 is working. The 70-30% split is working. And so overall, I think it's functioning well.
I can't believe that eventually the firefighters union isn't going to run out of things to spend money on. No
Well-
comment?
No.
Okay. If I may have a motion to adopt introductory number 425.
So moved.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 I say aye, carries 5-0. Introductory number 426, authorizing an agreement for web-based solicitation and bidding services. Questions on introductory number 426? If not, a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I say aye, carries 5-0. Introductory number 427, amending the 2017-18 budget. Questions on introductory number 427? If not, a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I say aye, carries 5-0. Introductory number 428, authorizing administrative tax cancellations and refunds of $1,000 or less for 2018. And this is an annual event where we authorize the finance director to basically take care of the nickel and dime things. Questions on 428? If not, a motion to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I say aye, carries 5-0. Introductory number 429, authorizing an agreement for state lobbying services. And there is also an amendment on this that corrects the source of funding to divide the cost over 2 fiscal years. Yeah, any questions on, and I noticed there were a number of questions which have all been answered in our packet. Any additional questions on 449? Not a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I say aye. Carries 5-0.
Oh, there's an amendment.
Have to vote on the amendment first.
Right. Well, hopefully this will be my final mistake as finance chair. Although I've got 2 more shots at it. Okay, so we're voting on the amendment for introductory number 429. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Say aye. And now on the main motion, a motion to authorize an agreement as amended. A motion to adopt, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I say aye, carries 5-0. Introductory number 450, bond ordinance of the City of Rochester.
You do want to go out with a bang. 449.
I'm sorry, I've allotted all my mistakes. Introductory number 449, authorizing an agreement with Ostrop Associates, Inc. for state lobbying services. Is there any questions on 449? Not, a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Say aye, carries 5-0. Introductory number 450, bond ordinance of the City of Rochester, amending ordinance 2014-243, and authorizing the issuance of $20,375,000 bonds of said city to finance the cost of improvements to specified city school district schools. Charlie, does this again bring the city school district up to their bonding authorization?
Yes, it does.
Okay. When do you suppose we're going to start seeing a decrease in the amount of bonding, considering what FMP is doing for the tune of $450 million?
This bonding ordinance, there's a couple items here that are really benefiting the city, the Baden Street as well as the Adams Street. So if, it's bonding that's going through the school district, but we're really the beneficiaries in terms of the recreation. So that would bring it down to about $17 million. That's pure school, if you will, where we would not be the beneficiary, where it's purely on the school. There's also a deauthorization of $1.5 million that they would have been able to issue should they needed additional funds that they pulled back on. And I think year over year, we have to look at this and make sure that we're not necessarily ratcheting up to the limit, but of course evaluating in terms of the needs, in terms of health and safety and that are with all the buildings, but also to make sure, as this does, that there's no bonding that will be utilized for the F&P projects.
Okay. I'd just like to reiterate that the intent of the Facilities Modernization Program was to take the work for schools and remove it out of the bonding for the city. Again, as a reminder, the city and the city school district are viewed as one entity to lending institutions. The school district is fiscally dependent, and I am very hopeful that in the years to follow, this amount will steadily decrease. I should point out the city of Buffalo has no bonding left for their school district. They used all of FMP for that. I should also point out that the city of Rochester, or the city of Syracuse, with their FMP, has reduced the limit of borrowing on their schools to $500,000. At $17 million, I think we're still too high, and it's something that I would urge the incoming council to closely monitor and keep a handle on. Any other additional questions on introductory number 450? Councilmember Patterson.
Just a comment. This was wonderfully done. It seemed as though every question I had was already answered. I think you should use it as a template for everything that you do. Very happy with what I had here.
Councilmember Clifford.
Yes, I noticed that there's a project here for School 41, the Kodak Park School, which I believe the fate of 41 School is in question. So I guess my question is, I'm assuming we can reprogram that funding if necessary?
Once authorized, there's always the option to deauthorize should things change, and that's something that we would definitely review with the school district.
Right. Thank you.
Additional questions? Councilmember McFadden.
I sit on the School 41 CET team. Right now, the district's plan for School 41 is to close it June 30th and reopen it July 1st with a different beds code.
That'd be good.
Okay. Additional questions on introductory number 450? If not, a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I say aye. Carries 5-0. Introductory number 451, authorizing an agreement for special event production services. Questions on introductory number 451? If not, a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I say aye. Carries 5-0. Introductory number 452, authorizing an agreement for the Rochester Music Fest. Questions on introductory 452? If not, a motion to adopt is in order.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I say aye. Carries 5-0. Are there any additional questions for the Finance Committee? Okay. If not, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Okay, we will then call the Business and Economic Development Committee to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice President Miller,
Here.
Councilmember Patterson, Councilmember Spall.
Here.
President Scott.
Thank you. I will note that we're joined by Council Members Clifford, Conklin, McFadden, and Ortiz. We have one item of business before us today, introductory number 430, authorizing the acquisition of 768 Brown Street. There were a number of questions related to this introductory that were submitted, and we do have answers that have been provided, and they're very detailed answers. Are there any additional questions from council on this item? Councilmember Conklin.
Thank you. Actually, I will, at the council meeting on Tuesday night, I will vote no on this. I have some grave concerns about a property that is assessed value with the city of Rochester for $30,000, and we're going to spend $57,000 to purchase a vacant building that has multiple code violations, delinquent tax, delinquent water bill. We're also going to authorize additional money for relocation for an empty house. I think this is an extreme waste of city taxpayer dollars, and I will be a no vote on this on Tuesday.
Dana?
Councilmember Small?
Yeah, I have
What-
to agree.
I'm sorry, did you want an
I'm
answer to that,
sorry.
or was that just a statement, Councilmember?
I beg your pardon?
Were you expecting an answer, or was that just a?
No, that was, I said, that was just
Oh,
a
okay.
statement.
All right, thank you, I'm sorry. Okay, Councilmember Spall?
Yeah, I read through this again and again, and I appreciate all the time that was spent in the answers. I think the piece that's really sort of the final issue for me is the relocation. I understand that sometimes there's policies and protocols that just are standard. It's also a time when sometimes someone shows good faith, and it's very difficult for me to vote yes on this. I'm going to vote no, even though I really believe that you need this for some other things you're doing. I think there's a way to go back and negotiate some of these things and to see some good faith. In some ways, it feels to me like we're rewarding someone who has not performed well on behalf of our city. And then we have these procedures and protocols that we follow no matter what. And we don't try to have someone say, wait a second, I, in good faith, really want to give the city back some of what I've taken and not taken care of. So I appreciate the time. I appreciate the answers. I do have to agree with my colleague, and so I'm going to vote no at the committee level. I don't know whether that will change things for everybody else, but I do appreciate the time you took to provide the answers to me. I just was hoping there would be some more possible negotiation that could change the formula. At the end of the day, our job is to watch our city dollars, and I would agree. I think there was a better way to get to the bottom line here, so I appreciate it, but I am going to vote no.
So we have Rich Height here, who's our consultant for our URA for the Bulls Head area. He can comment on the act, how it came about, and why we came to that price.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yes, in terms of this project that we're involved with, at some point the city made a decision based on the potential for federal funding to become available in the Bulls Head development area, that as a result of that decision with the federal funding, the project was now subject to a federal statute called the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Policy Act of 1970. I understand the concerns about what we are required to do, but the statute and the implementing regulation are very specific in terms of what rights the property owners and tenants have. In this instance, the owner of the property does have some personal property on site pursuant to the Uniform Act. He has a right to be compensated for moving that personal property. In this instance, it's a residential property. We're talking about a minor amount of personal property that needs to be moved. So in terms of trying to negotiate, there really isn't any opportunity within the process that we are required to follow. And I think the important point is here, these projects, any of these federally funded projects, are subject to audit. And these are the items that they're going to look at. They're going to say, did you inform the property owner of their rights? Did you follow through and provide them with the assistance that the Uniform Act dictates? And that's how we got to this point. I think in this instance with this property, the relocation costs are going to be very minimal.
Any follow-up questions? Any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Patterson.
Just explain to us again how you came to this purchase price.
Is that directed to me?
Or somebody?
Yes, okay, okay.
Anybody who can answer.
Okay, again, we just discussed the requirement to comply with the Uniform Act. Within the Uniform Act, there's a specific section that discusses what procedure needs to be followed as we go through an acquisition of real property. And part of that process involves an appraisal as the first step and an appraisal review. So essentially what happens is there's a certified general real estate appraiser with the proper qualifications that would come in and prepare an appraisal of the property. In this instance, the primary approach was comparable sales. So as part of his process, he did research on the market within the vicinity of the subject property. He looked at sales within a half mile of the property. And he analyzed those sales. He goes through a process where he makes adjustments to those sales based on location, size, number of bedrooms and bathrooms. There's a number of items, condition of the property. So there are a number of items that he assesses and makes adjustments to those comparable sales that he identified through his research. Ultimately, he comes up with a range of values, an adjusted range of values, and based on that range of values, he determines and concludes a value for the property. Subsequent to that appraisal, there's a secondary step, which is called an appraisal review. Again, this involves a certified general real estate appraiser here in New York State. He will review the appraisal for compliance with a standard called USPAP. And again, at the end, he will make statements regarding the completeness of the report and he has the option, but in this instance, he did agree with the statement of value.
Okay, we're following this process because it's the city of Rochester buying it, and so we're obligated to follow this federal process, and regardless of how ridiculous the number may seem to us, this is the number that the process generates.
Well, again, the process determined a number based on the data that was available. Whether or not it's ridiculous, I don't know.
Right, well,
I can't
that's not,
comment
yeah, you
on
can't
that.
characterize that. Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, I did have one question that came up after hearing your explanation. I'm looking at the table that we received, which is very helpful. It shows the line item for location, and I see that there's no adjustment made for location. So essentially, all 5 of these comparable properties are considered to be exactly the same location-wise as the one that is being purchased. And I'm just wondering, when you mentioned a half-mile radius, one thing we know, and it's unfortunate, but one thing we know about our city is that within a half-mile radius, properties can have a very, very different value by just crossing a neighborhood boundary or by even in sometimes streets within a neighborhood. And so it seems odd that there would not be any adjustment for the location on Brown Street versus Maple Street, for example. When the appraiser takes a look at that, how do they factor in the location? Do they look at the neighborhoods themselves or the streets, or what are they looking for in terms of location?
It would be a comparison of neighborhoods, yes. It would be, again, here we have a situation where we have residential neighborhoods that were considered the properties themselves in terms of location, exposure to those properties. Again, it's an opinion, and it's based on experience in terms of which properties through that research fit into the context of the appraisal problem. And I think one of the other things that was as important and that was considered is all of these sales occurred within the last 18 months. So in certain neighborhoods, it can be difficult to find sales that would be considered comparable.
Okay.
I think in this instance, the range may be the thing, the range of values may be the issue that people are focused on, but the whole adjustment process is intended to bring those properties to be more comparable. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the price is going to be more comparable. It's all of these characteristics that are evaluated through that process become more comparable. So in the end, you come up with an adjusted range of values that do the best you can with the process to bring a group of comparable sales together for determining a value.
Okay, but the adjusted variables result in a change in price, correct? That's what we're looking at here.
It's an adjustment either down
or up.
if it's viewed to be, in this instance, if it was a better location, it would be adjusted down. If
Right.
it was a inferior location, it would be adjusted up.
Okay. And do we ever take a look at the actual, quote-unquote, what the market will bear in this evaluation? The only reason I ask is because this particular property was listed for sale for $29,600 and then was taken off the market recently. And so one of the questions is, if it was offered for sale for $29,000 and didn't attract any buyers at that price, it seems like that would be something we would either want to be aware of or would factor into the decision.
Yes, as part of the process, the appraiser would take a look at that aspect of it. However, I'm not sure when that sale or when it was for sale. I don't know. During the period that we've been involved and the appraisal occurred, we were not aware of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Dana?
I'm sorry. We have another question. Councilmember Conklin.
No, I have.
Thank you, Vice President Miller. When I was listening to you explain the process for setting price and the different entities you listed, there was one omission I did not. There was one admission. I heard no mention of the city assessor's office. The city assessor's office is charged with assessing the value of property the taxes are paid on. Of course, this property wasn't paying any taxes. That's another issue. But the city had assessed this property for $30,000, including, well, it was actually $32,000, $2,000 including the land. That was obviously never a part of the discussion, and because of federal regulations, the city of Rochester is going to wind up paying close to $100,000 for a house on Brown Street that couldn't sell for $29,000 a few months ago. This makes absolutely no sense to me at all, and I think is an abuse of federal and city dollars.
Councilmember Spall.
Thank you. So one of the things that I'm looking at this range between 30 and 66.9, and 4 of the 5 properties are under 41.9s. I get the range, but that 66 is pushing this way up, and so 4 of the 5. So it makes it sound like there's a range that goes along here, and it doesn't. Also, it says, "It is my opinion that the market indicates a total value of $55,000." Whose opinion is that?
Right.
Who wrote that? I'm just wondering. I mean, where is that? Is it coming from?
It's coming from the
assessors?
It's coming
Charlie?
from the appraiser.
Is that you?
No.
Okay. Okay, it is my opinion that the market, so I'm just wondering, somebody's opinion is helpful to us. Is it coming, Charlie, is that your opinion? It's the last.
This was done as a fee appraisal, as I understand. Our value on the assessment system is what was cited at 30,000.
I mean, somebody took the time to write this to us. I'm just wondering who said it is my opinion, because I'd like to know where that opinion's coming from. And, I know that's a really central to that whole piece, and it's right smack in the middle, and I get that, and I'm not saying we shouldn't buy it. I just am having a really hard time with the price, and also, we have to demolish it. Is there any way to recoup some of that cost from the buyer? I mean, I'm sure there's not, but, and when you say there's no way to mediate or no way to talk about it, you know, go get your stuff out of the house, bud. I mean, you're having a great deal here, and it's vacant, and it's a few things. I mean, that's the kind of good faith, because this is not a person who has shown good faith at all. And now we're kind of rewarding that bad faith. So I'm going to stick with my no vote. I appreciate the time, and I think my colleagues are okay with this, but it just doesn't feel right. So I'm going to be honest with you. But thank you.
I believe, based on conversation I've had with the owner, that he has been moving his personal property out on his own, and I don't honestly believe he's going to be expecting much, if any, relocation reimbursement. I don't know that for sure, but just based on conversation with him.
Council President?
Thank you. You indicated that you weren't aware of the prior $29,000 sale price offered during this process. Had you been aware, how would that have affected this purchase price?
I understand. I understand. That's a good question. That's a good question. I think it may have had some impact, but again, I'm not the appraiser. A listing price, because that can work the opposite way as well, and we see that quite often, that someone will list a property for something substantially higher than what we would appraise. So I don't really know totally what the relevance of a listing would be, other than the expectations of the property owner may not reflect what the market would bear. Again, we looked at sales within the last 18 months. Those are actual sales of properties that we could demonstrate were arm's length transactions. So there was no influence on them other than what the market would bear to purchase those properties. So I think in terms of that aspect of the appraisal, I don't think the appraiser would take into consideration that much. I think he would, again, in this instance, as he did, focus primarily on the comparable sales that he was able to find through his research effort.
So what the market would bear, you just said what the market, so it didn't sell, so I'm not sure what the market would bear. So, yeah.
Commissioner,
Councilmember Spall, did you?
I'm good,
Oh.
sorry.
Okay.
Commissioner Mohammed, this is clearly problematic. Can you think of any other prospects for making this more palatable, more saleable, for it to make sense? Because as presently submitted, it just doesn't seem to make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I can do that. I think a lot of this, I know a lot of this is tied into federal statutes. If it was me negotiating, I think I'm a great negotiator, and it would be much lower, but we're dealing with federal statutes. The only other option I see is just we can take this back, and when the URA plan is completely done and we move to further areas to grab parcels, we can come back to this, but this will be, years out.
And the impact on this development?
It'll slow up what we've already started. So I think we've been to council, maybe 4 times this year. Property owners have approached us. We've purchased properties. Eventually we'll get it. I'm confident that we'll get it. It'll just further slow the process up. And I know there was delays years ago for the whole Bull's Head plan. And the mayor committed to funding this. This was in our budget to fund. We have the money. I do understand I don't know the owner, but I do understand, he didn't pay the taxes, water bill and stuff, but we're on a mission too. That mission doesn't include abuse, but eventually I'm confident we'll get it. I would rather get it now. And like I said, I'm only following the federal rules. If it was just me negotiating or my team, sure we would get the price reduced. But I don't want to be in violation of anybody's rights.
And do you have the ability to have that conversation with the Fed reps?
The federal government?
Yeah.
Rich, is that?
Oh, yes, yes. They're open to conversation, but they, from my own experience, adhere very closely to what the requirements are of the Uniform Act. There's not a whole lot of leeway. And
Okay.
It's something that I deal with on an ongoing basis all across the state of New York. And, you know, we're constrained. When there are federal dollars involved in the project, we don't have that flexibility. And unfortunately, I know in a lot of instances, municipalities react the same way. It's difficult to say, wow, why do we have to do this? And the reality is, if you're going to take the federal
My
dollars,
money, my rules.
you got to play by their rules. Exactly.
Councilmember Patterson.
All right. Well, could you possibly ask a question for us and get us an answer pretty quickly? And the question is this. Since the property was offered for sale at a significantly lower price and it was then withdrawn, is the price that it was offered at something that can be considered in the appraisal and evaluation of the property? Simply put, they offered it for $29 and they didn't sell it. Can you consider that in your appraisal process? Why or why not?
Okay. I don't have a problem with that.
Council, that was going to be my recommendation because this is creating clearly a great deal of concern. And if we could have time, if you would, to go back and revisit this a little bit, because I think y'all deserve a much greater answer probably than what we're able to provide. Even though we're constrained by certain federal regulations, I still would like to ask Bayer Muhammad in his office and address some of these concerns, at least to some sense of satisfaction in terms of what you're getting here tonight, if that's okay.
Okay.
Because basically, if we're stuck and this is the deal and this is what we have to pay, at least if the question is asked and answered, and we understand that, yes, we are in fact stuck, then okay, we proceed forward, and those who vote for it, and those who vote against it. But it's a fair question to ask, and it's a fair question to get an answer for.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll do that.
So we're going to hold this in committee and give you some time to do that. While you're looking at that, one other question that comes to mind is, it says that it gives us an estimated price for the demolition, but it also mentions that upgrades observed included relatively recent vinyl windows siding. From the photographs that were provided when this was listed, it did appear to have relatively new, a relatively new kitchen. There is not any opportunity for the current owner to remove any of those items prior to sale. Is that correct? I mean, I wouldn't want the present owner to say, wow, they're going to buy this from me, they're going to tear it down, let me strip. I mean, that isn't possible. Is that correct?
To remove the kitchen and siding?
Or whatever,
I don't
yeah.
know. I'm sure that's possible, but we're not watching.
That's what I would do.
Okay, so we wouldn't watch the property to make sure that that doesn't happen.
No.
Prior to our purchase. Okay.
No.
Okay, thank you. All right. That concludes the business of our committee. Thank you.
All right, so I'd like to call the Neighborhood Community Development Committee to order and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Ortiz?
Here.
Councilmember Conklin?
Here.
Councilmember Clifford?
Here.
Vice President Miller?
Here.
President Scott?
Okay, I'd like to acknowledge that we are joined by everyone else. Introductory number 431, authorizing the sale of real estate. Questions, comments, concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Introductory number 432, authorizing real estate lease agreement with Voyager Boat Sales Incorporated. Questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Introductory number 433, amending ordinance number 2017-203 regarding the acquisition of 239 Silver Street. Councilmember Conklin.
Thank you, Chair. Just a notation here, and I know Council President asked too. Now, this property also has unpaid taxes, and there is an assurance that those taxes will all be paid at closing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Introductory number 434, appropriating funds for the Celebrate City Living Program. There were questions. There was an adjustment to the transmittal on this. Any additional questions, comments on this item?
Move to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Introductory number 435, authorizing an amendatory agreement for the Rochester Mobility Enhancement Study. Questions, comments on this item?
Move to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Introductory number 436, approving appointments to the Rochester Preservation Board. Questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Introductory number 437, amending the zoning map for various properties. A public hearing to be held at 5 o'clock after the December 14th committee meetings. This is the project for Pueblo Nuevo. I know that I see the developer is here. Any questions, comments on this? We did have a nice lengthy session on this, but are there any additional questions or comments on this item?
Move to consider.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Introductory number 438, amending the zoning map for 1464 Lyle Avenue, also a public hearing to be held at 5 o'clock on this item. Any questions, comments? If not, a motion to consider?
Do you have a question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Clifford.
Thank you. Just a question about any comments submitted in writing about this item for the Planning Commission? No.
Did you receive? Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Move to consider.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Introductory number 439. This one is relocating and appropriating funds and authorizing amendatory agreements for the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS program, and there is an amendment on this item as well. The amendment reads, changing sections 1C to reflect that the reprogrammable amount for 2016-17 has been decreased from $25,252.23 to $24,666.25. Any questions on this and or the amendment?
Move to amend.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now let's vote on item 439 as amended.
Move to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. If there is no additional business before this committee, we are adjourned.
I'd like to call the Parks and Public Works Committee to order and have the clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Hague.
Here.
Councilmember Patterson. Here. Councilmember Spall.
Here.
Vice President Miller.
Here.
President Scott.
Mike, you're really here?
He's here.
And we are joined by everyone else. Introductory number 440, authorizing a change in traffic flow on Beach Street, a public hearing to be held at 5 p.m. after the December 14th, 2017 committee meeting. Any questions on 440? Yes, Councilmember Conklin.
Thank you. I had originally questioned why this was the only one-way street in the whole area, and then I drove over and took a look at it. It should have always been a one-way street. So, yeah, thank you for the questions and answers that we received.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions on 440?
I just was wondering if the neighborhood association was part of a conversation on this.
Councilperson Spall, it was the neighborhood association that drove this. They wanted this change.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So moved.
It's a motion to consider, so moved. Is there a second?
Second. He did.
Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye. Turn your thing on. He's refusing to turn his mic on.
Opposed? I say aye, passes 5-0. Introductory number 441, amending ordinance number 2017-43, amending the official map in relation to the Inner Loop East Transformation Project, a public hearing to be held at 5 p.m. after the December 14th, 2017 committee meeting. Any questions on 441? If not, is there a motion to consider?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I say aye, passes 4-0. Introductory number 442, authorizing the acceptance of an easement as part of the Hincher Street Group Improvement Project. Any questions on 442? If not, is there a motion to adopt?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I say aye, passes 5-0. Introductory number 443, a bond ordinance of the City of Rochester, New York, authorizing the issuance of $1,185,000 bonds of said city to finance the cost of the 2018 annual parking garage evaluation and repair program. There are a number of questions about this. Are there any additional Councilmember Spall?
So we should expect the South Avenue garage to be under construction for 10 more years.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. There's certain things that have to take place so we don't have a repeat of the situation that occurred in 2006. We are right now going through a process called belt and suspenders that's going to keep the actual garage structure intact, in place, and fully safe and operational.
Okay. I mean, we have to be safe. It's just, it's becoming kind of a joke over there, and people are learning to go around, but it's just looking at this, it's very expensive, and I get that we can't do it all at once. We'd have to close the whole thing down, but it's over 10 years. Okay.
Well, it's when you defer maintenance on anything, eventually you do have to pay for it at some later date.
Right.
And we're fortunate enough that we're in a position where we can make these changes, and we've identified what we need to do to keep this garage functional and operational.
Yeah. Thank you. So moved.
Is there, Councilmember Patterson?
Just a general question. Aren't parking structures in our climate pretty much structures that basically beaten up by the weather and the salt and the rain and the wind and the expansion of the ice and all that nice fun stuff? Don't those structures tend to take a beating in general?
Absolutely. However, they do take a beating, but if you don't do the proper steps in regards to a washdown system, cleaning out the drains, and making sure that the salt and the solids and the chlorides are rinsed down and washed out, if you defer that, that will clearly accelerate the deterioration of all the concrete and the basically the tension material that's embedded within the concrete. So right now, what we're doing is making sure that we bring them up to a certain standard and making sure that these preventive maintenance steps and predictive maintenance steps are taking place.
Thank you.
Councilmember Clifford?
Just a quick question. What's a stair nosing?
Stair nosings are the black or green or whatever tread that you put on the actual stairs, and it gives you a certain amount of coverage, so when you walk up the stairs, it's not, those edges aren't chipping off. So when you put that nosing on there, it gives you a little bit more
So
protection.
they're separate pieces.
Yes.
Thank you.
I will note that the belt and suspenders method is something that worked for one of my uncles for about 20 years or so. So I'm hoping it'll work for us. It's something he employed. So
Right in South Avenue.
yeah.
So moved.
Second.
Any additional questions or comments on 443? If not, do I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I say aye, passes 5-0. Introductory number 444, authorizing a New York State Municipal Waste Reduction and Recycling Program application and agreement. Any questions on this?
Move it.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I say aye, passes 5-0. Introductory number 445, authorizing an agreement with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation for the disposition of electronic waste material. I know there were a number of questions related to this. Are there any additional questions on 445?
Councilperson Haig, I just
Commissioner.
want to say thank you to you and Assemblyman Harry Bronson for securing these funds for us. What this is going to help us do is have a couple more e-waste days in which we're going to be able to recycle our electronic waste in an environmentally safe manner.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
So moved?
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I say aye, passes 5-0. Introductory number 446, authorizing an agreement with the New York State Department of State to fund LED lighting upgrades to the Thomas P. Ryan R Center Athletic Field. Any questions on 446? President Scott.
Commissioner, the installation of the lights, I'm sure will be welcomed by the teams that practice and play there. But what about the neighbors? I know that when we were planning for the reconstruction of that facility, one of the things that they were concerned about, even recognizing that the Ryan Center would be sort of one of several upper level, we'll say, facilities in the community, they were concerned that the level of light pollution would impact their neighborhoods. Now, we assured them that wouldn't be the case. What is the effect of this?
Madam President, these will be LED lights. They'll will be set to go off at a certain time frame. What's going on with the Pop Warner teams, when we have a team like the Rochester Rams that really extended their season on to January, they're actually going to be playing at the Disney competition this year. They don't have a place.
They won.
I beg your pardon?
They played and they won.
Okay, well, they played and they won. Good commercial. But what happens is that it gets dark early in October around 4:30, and these young people get out of school around 4 o'clock. They don't have any area or any place to practice. So what we're doing here is extending their practice time in the months of October and November. These lights will stay on to probably about 6:30 most nights. They're not going to be on at 11 o'clock at night. They won't be on for a basketball court. They'll be on for the Rochester Rams Pop Warner League, which probably is one of the best leagues in the city.
Thank you.
So I want just to add a comment.
Councilmember Spall.
Thank you, and Norm, thank you, because it also gives a sense of safety. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic with the library, a lot of kids walking around. So I agree with President Scott. It can't be at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, but I do think that's great. And thank you to Assemblyman Gant. I'm assuming the school district didn't help us in any way with this, but that's just a comment. That's not really a question. But I think it's a good thing. This is a very active site, and lots of meetings, lots of people in and out. It just gives a sense of safety. So, so thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and just overall, thank you for the investment that your department and the city as a whole has made in improving the field condition there over time, capped off by some lights, as I said to the commissioner the other day. And glad to know that we're not lighting up a swamp that it used to be, so it's very good. Any additional questions or comments on introductory 446?
Move to adopt.
Moved and seconded? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I say aye, passes 5-0. Introductory number 453, authorizing a dog park at Cobbs Hill Park. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Conklin.
Yes. And I understand it's an unmitigated success story, and I'm very glad to see it being a part of the permanent. Just a couple of perfunctory things. Now that it's extended into a permanent dog park, and we're going to be looking at another location, hopefully for all 4 quadrants, winter operation, how will you handle snow removal, both white and yellow, in the dog park? That was a
Well-
weak attempt at a joke.
Councilperson Conklin, I'm going to miss those types of questions. The yellow snow will naturally go into the aquifers that we have, and hopefully the final remediators will take care of that. The other material that's a byproduct of the dog park, it's on an honor system. We have pooper stations throughout the dog park where people are supposed to, curb their dog or pick up their dog waste and put it into that those containers. We're there on a daily basis to pick up that waste, and we find that we're getting an ample supply of that material.
What do you do with it?
We take it and we put it in our municipal solid waste system,
Okay.
a garbage truck.
And just, thank you, Commissioner Jones. Just also like to say to you and Karen St. Auburn's crew, 2 days of snow, and the city streets were wonderful. The major ones were bare, and the secondary ones were clean. I think you guys did a great job with the first 2 days of snow, and a lot of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's just not myself and Karen. It's a whole team of individuals that work together. We have inspectors that come in from MBD and DRIS. We have people from the police department helping us out with people who are parking the wrong way. Everyone works together. We have equipment services making sure that all of our trucks are out there. We had trucks that went down, but not one time during the entire weather event were we at risk of being underneath our service level agreement for snow plows or salters. So it's a team effort, and I thank you for those compliments for the team.
Any additional questions on 453? If not, do we have a motion to adopt?
Move to adopt?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I say aye, passes 5-0. If there's no additional business to come before this committee, we are adjourned.
Could the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember McFadden?
Here.
Councilmember Clifford?
Here.
Councilmember Hague?
Here.
Vice President Miller?
Here.
President Scott?
Let the record reflect that everyone else is here as well. Introductory item number 447, authorizing agreements for the U.S. Department of Justice COPS Community Policing Development Micro Grant. Are there any questions, concerns?
And
Councilmember Conklin.
thank you. This is basically entering into a contractual agreement with RIT. Why is it necessary to hire an IT consultant outside of that contract?
Good evening. I'm going to let the co-writer of the application, Adrian Martin, answer that question.
Well, so the work of the grant is going to be kind of split up into two sections. The first section we need to get done is to take the data that's currently stored as images and get it into digital text. And that's kind of, the preparation for the work that the RIT students will be doing with us of taking the text and running their algorithms on it. So before they can run their algorithms on the text, we have to take the text and transform it from images into actual text. And that's what we're hiring the contractor for.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Motion carries. Introductory item number 448, authorizing a license agreement with the Cornhill Neighbors Association for use of space in Lunsford Circle Park. Councilmember Conklin.
Thank you, Councilmember McFadden. I just want to give a little plug, and in full disclosure, I'm a member of Cornhill Neighbors Association, but I think it's important that every year hundreds of thousands of people come to the Cornhill Arts Festival. Those proceedings are turned around and given back to the community. And this is one more instance of Cornhill neighbors reinvesting in a neighborhood they care deeply about. So I see Joe Arena sitting here. He's been the prime mover and shaker behind this, and I shall probably not be able to vote for it, but I will enthusiastically support it.
But will you swing on it?
Yes. Want to join me?
Yes.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Is there any other business to come before the committee? Hearing none, we'll adjourn.
We will now begin the public hearings. Meeting will come to order, and the clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Clifford?
Here.
Councilmember Conklin?
She's here.
Here.
Councilmember Hague?
Here.
Councilmember McFadden? Here. Councilmember Ortiz? Councilmember Patterson? Here. Councilmember Spall?
Here.
Councilmember Vice President Miller?
Here.
President Scott?
Here. I'd now ask the clerk to begin the hearings.
Pursuant to law, public hearing will now be had on the following matter: amending the zoning map for various properties, introductory number 437. Any persons desiring to speak in reference to said matter will now be heard.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Sahelski. I live at number 25 Holzer Street, and it's in the neighborhood that is under consideration for development. I've lived on Holzer Street for over 60 years, and I'm the longest resident on the street. I feel that I'm most impacted by this development on the street because there are double houses proposed across the street, to the east of my property and one to the west, so on 3 sides. I'd like to start by saying that I think that redeveloping vacant lots is good and necessary for the city. And in general, I do not oppose the R1 to R2 reassignment. However, I have some concerns about the size of the units as planned, which push the limits of the R2 zoning, including the 35-foot building height. The proposed 2-story houses are taller and more massive than all but one house on the street, and will change the character of the neighborhood. The original subdivision had several similar giant houses. Thankfully, most of them are gone. Now the street has a more relaxed quality with a mix of 1.5-story homes and the new Habitat for Humanity houses. I reached out to Ibero Development, and they agreed to give this another look. I am hopeful that they will make necessary adjustments, and we will achieve a more consistent sight line down the street. Whatever we do, it will be with us for the next 100 years, and for most of us, that's probably the rest of our lives. Assuming that the council passes the R2 zoning change, I ask that you include language requiring a review of this issue of massing, overall street building heights and proportions, so that this factor is not overlooked. I also believe that side setbacks need to be set at 10-foot minimum, all considered. I can provide graphic material if necessary to illustrate my point, and I thank you, and I hope that together we can achieve a revitalized and attractive neighborhood. Thank you.
Are there any additional speakers on this item? If there are none, that hearing is closed.
Pursuant to law, a public hearing will now be had on the following matter: amending the zoning map for 1464 Lyle Avenue, introductory number 438. Any persons desiring to speak in reference to said matter will now be heard.
If there are no speakers, that hearing is closed.
Pursuant to law, a public hearing will now be had on the following matter: authorizing a change in traffic flow on Beach Street, introductory number 440. Any persons desiring to speak in reference to said matter will now be heard.
If there are no speakers, that hearing is closed.
Pursuant to law, a public hearing will now be had on the following matter: amending ordinance number 2017-43, amending the official map in relation to the Inner Loop East Transformation Project. Introductory number 441. Any person desiring to speak in reference to said matter will now be heard.
There are no speakers. That hearing is closed. This concludes our public hearing segment. These items will be considered at the full council meeting on Tuesday evening. Good night. Thank you for coming. The meeting is adjourned.